Welcome to SYNC-O-WICZ, your premier destination for election news and information. We are proud to present a brand new series designed to help you discover each candidate's platform. Join us where all candidates from all parties are welcome. Every candidate, every party, no filter. Let's jump in.
Hi, and welcome. My name is Linda SYNC-O-WICZ. I am the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. Most of you are used to seeing me on the program SYNC-O-WICZ. Well, now we have a brand new series called SYNC-O-WICZ Presents Candidate Spotlight. So we're going to welcome our first candidate guest, Chris Bish, who is running for the 3rd Congressional District in the state of California. Welcome, Chris.
Oh, thank you for having me on and christening the show, if you will.
Yes, we are so excited about this. We wanted to make sure we give an opportunity to any and every candidate that wants to tell their constituents what they're about. So the first thing is, who are you? Who are you and why are you running?
That's a loaded question, especially out here in California. Well, my name is Christine Bish, and I am the candidate for California's 3rd Congressional District. And who am I? You know, I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, waiting for my 5th granddaughter to be born. We're about 2 weeks away. But I'm also a financial investigator. I spent 10 years in a local law firm. Before that, I used to repossess cars and track down bad guys, help bounty hunters find people who had jumped bail. And, I did all that when I was young and running and gunning. Retired from the law firm in 2000, and I was an investigator there, locating people, locating assets, locating witnesses, and decided to become a real estate agent. Actually, at first I became a mortgage loan officer, and we had the big crash for real estate, and I transitioned into selling real estate, and it was just this weird journey, if you will, of all these different jobs that made me uniquely qualified for running for Congress. And a lot of the work that I'm doing the financial investigating, uncovering voter fraud, election fraud, I'll just throw it out there, running down Adam Schiff and his mortgage issues that he's got going on. And, I'm a person just like everybody else. I'm a voter. And anyone who has ever voted or talked about politics has sat around and said, why doesn't somebody run? Why doesn't somebody do something about it? Well, I'm that somebody. And I've got the fight. I've got the passion. I've been an activist for a long time. So I'm putting on the hat of doing something about it. And I'm running for Congress here in California. And I am a Republican. And here I am.
Okay, and it's the 3rd Congressional District. So what
Yes.
areas of California is the 3rd Congressional District in?
Okay, and another fun one, because we just had Prop 50 out here in California, where, they took our gerrymandered districts and then tried to gerrymander it just a little bit more. So the 3rd district takes in, it was designed for politicians to get even with other politicians, not to serve the voters. So we have the very southern part of the district, which is South Sacramento, Franklin and 47th if you're in California. This is more of an urban area. And then we travel up the freeway. And so we've got this, densely populated area in an economically challenged part of Sacramento County. And we go up through Placer County and hit Granite Bay, very affluent area in Placer County, completely different county. And then we go all the way up to Truckee and South Lake Tahoe. We cover parts of Placerville and Pollock Pines, which is the El Dorado National Forest, the Tahoe National Forest. So, rural areas with completely different issues than, the South Sacramento and down into those urban areas. It kind of looks like an elephant. And this was the district that was vacated by former Republican Kevin Kiley.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
So
a
what
diverse area, but I can do it.
So what would be your number one issue that you think is important to your constituents?
Number one issue, regardless of what party you're on, it's affordability. California is not affordable. Whether it's up in our fire country, when we get into the forest area, California Fair Plan, that's an insurance issue. The mismanagement of the forests in California have created wildfires that anybody who's been in the news podcast, has a pulse in the United States, knows about California on fire and how bad it really is. But, even with the extra taxes that California charges on gas, with them trying to force us into everything electric, shutting down oil and gas production, natural gas production, plus the taxes, people are being taxed out of their homes, whether it's, like I said, insurance or energy costs. We are under attack. What the news is covering in New York under Mondami, California, we've been living it. And that's why, coming the next census, we're expected to lose 2, possibly 3 congressional seats because of people fleeing California, the refugees. And I'm fighting to let people stay in their homes.
Wow. And that doesn't even include all the illegals that are being picked up and sent out of the country. That would be a lot of, 2 to 3 congressional seats. That's a lot of people we're talking about.
Well,
We already know, that California has serious issues with their finances and how everything is being done. So that would be your number one issue, would be the affordability.
correct.
If you could talk to a regular homeowner, what would you say that you believe would make them vote for you, on what you would be doing specifically for them?
It depends where they are. So if I'm talking to someone in the high fire area, a lot of homeowners, believe it or not, they're going into foreclosure if they have a mortgage. Because under the California Fair Plan, which is state insurance, it's backup insurance, the premiums are often higher than the mortgage payment. So people can no longer afford, they can make their house payment. And if they had, even just a little bump on the insurance, most of them can handle it. But when it is more than your house payment, you can't afford to live there. People are walking away from their houses. I have a real estate business. I've been doing real estate since I retired in the law firm. Since 2003 is when I started in mortgage and real estate, and watching the mismanagement of our forests and the consequences. So when I talk to people, they just don't want to be driven out of their homes. If they wanted to live, whether it's Florida, Idaho, New Mexico, wherever Californians are being forced to, flee the state just for affordability issues, I would say, I want to help you stay in your home. And I'm not telling you what I want to do, because I've already authored a bill called the Wildfire Act. And whether I'm elected or not, I'm pushing this to get a current member of Congress to sponsor this bill. And it's modeled after national flood insurance. And this is a direct way that I can give relief to homeowners. Now, this is for people in the fire area. And it also affects people down in those urban areas that aren't in the high fire areas. Because the truth is, all of our insurance is higher in California. Everything is more expensive. Utilities, they blame the utility companies for the fires that are happening in California. It goes to water management. Everything is related. You have to think about the consequences. And we've just got a giant rat's nest of consequences caused by politicians in California and in Washington, D.C. They think California is lost. But if you're here, you know that it's not just Republican versus Democrat. This is sane versus insane, and a lot goes into it. Election integrity, how we're doing our votes, the taxes on gas. It's not just one issue, because I understand the scope of the issue.
Okay, so we also have seen in the news that President Trump has opened up the oil again offshore in California.
Yes.
Is that helping the prices go down yet, or do we have to wait just a little bit of time to actually see that?
Well, it's going to take
Is that
time because that's helping us as far as a national security crisis. And that is the oil and gas production, not just in California, but in the United States. But we also have a problem in California with our refineries. The refineries, they've had so much regulation on upgrading and repairing them that the refineries are just closing down. And this has effects not just on California, but on New Mexico, Arizona, where they're not on the ocean. They don't have their own refineries. So there is consequences to the actions of what's going on in California and how it affects other states. And this is the opportunity for a federal candidate to come in because we're talking about interstate commerce and national security. So it goes back to an unelected appointed bureaucrats on a board called CARB. And thank you, Gavin Newsom, for affecting oil gas production and national security issues. So this is something that I am passionate about opening up our oil rigs, not only offshore, but down in Kern County and all the way down Central California, get us producing our own oil, not buying it from our enemies, and building new refineries, allowing under national security really to retrofit and repair the existing refineries so we can get production up immediately. And then while we're building new, modern, clean refineries here in California that will service most of the West Coast.
wow? So I just got to ask you, what is the price of gas right now in California?
I
Just
talked to a friend of mine
curious.
yesterday. She was really excited because she was getting it regular unleaded for $5.09 a gallon. I know diesel, we have a diesel pickup truck on one of the trucks, and it was a deal at $6.49 a gallon. And
I
everybody's
mean,
on
that
that now.
yeah, that's the stuff that's absolutely insane. Now, some of the stuff that, again, we're on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast. And
Right.
some of the stuff that we hear about has to do with that train that they've spent billions of dollars on, but hasn't gone and isn't even up and running 10
The
years
train
of
to
working on it?
nowhere.
Yes, the train to nowhere. So you have that. You also have a number of I guess we call it the leering centers, the
Yep.
same
And
as Minnesota. You've got the Medicaid fraud. I mean, it's in the billions of dollars that we're hearing that the taxpayers have been already scammed out of in California. But you don't really get a chance to see your governor because he's all over the country or out of the country. He's not. That's the other thing that we see. If you got a state that has a problem, you should be in that state trying to fix the problem. But no, he's all over the place. We
sleep
know that. Yeah.
for the people in California, we like him hanging out in Davos and all those other places. It's less damage that he can do here.
Oh,
It's go. Let everybody see what's going on. I hate what's happening to my state. I live here. I've raised my family here. But what Gavin Newsom has done is he's been allowed to just be out of control, untouchable. And this is something the rest of the country needs to see because what's happening in California, you think Mandami's bad in New York? Wait till if you saw a President Newsom, what's happening in California is just insane. Whether it's not just the leering centers, but we've also got the hospice fraud. We have COVID funds that were misspent right here in Sacramento, where even our county supervisors spent $23 million to buy an old warehouse on about 8 acres for the homeless. This was back in 2021, right? Spent $23 million. But the property, I'm in real estate, so I pulled it. That property was purchased by an investment company for $12 million 1 year before, less than a year before. They made no improvements. There was nothing done. And it was a warehouse. So people could never live in it. So what ended up happening is the county paid double for it because they had to use it or lose it. Then they put a big fence around the whole property, and we were paying private security to keep the homeless out of the building that we bought to house the homeless that
Oh my
homeless couldn't live in. So I started digging into that, and it turned out that this property was part of I guess, a trust. It was cross collateralized. So this $23 million that we spent on this $12 million property was cross collateralized for over $500 million for some other fund. And last
God.
time I checked, we hadn't gotten a release on that. And, people couldn't live there. That COVID money was misspent. So apparently now they're trying to finally, 5 years later, 6 years later, out there trying to dig up the parking lot so they can put in these little coffin homes. And they're these little plastic tough sheds. They run about, normally they should run about $3,000 even with a mini split, but we're actually paying upwards of $10,000. And there are these little 6x6 coffins with, if they die in there, they can bury them in them. They're just wretched.
Oh my
The
God.
people that are in them, they're upset about it. And what's crazy is for that same $12 million back in 2021, I found an old motel that was for sale. And it had, I believe it was 113, 114 units. So they already had bathrooms. There were bedrooms in there. There was office downstairs and room to put in a central kitchen. And we could have housed people immediately. But instead, the citizens of Sacramento County were paying for an empty warehouse that nobody could.
I still can't believe that they were paying for the security that after they put the fence around to keep the homeless out of what it was originally bought for the homeless.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
this
went
is
out and
the
took
type.
pictures. It was insane. Absolutely insane. And, what goes on here is crazy. I actually, Scott Pressler came out and we visited a homeless camp underneath a freeway overpass. And they were flying an American flag. And what it was, a group of disabled vets who couldn't afford housing. So they built this camp and they were operating, whoever the commanding officer was, they were operating themselves as if they were still in the military to maintain order. And this was a homeless camp underneath an overpass. And if you're in Sacramento area, it was over off a Longview. And so I was out there with Scott Pressler and we were doing the cleanup, had a bunch of volunteers, and the commander of, I guess, of this makeshift camp, if you will, I asked permission. I said, I got a lot of volunteers who'd like to clean up around the perimeter because I understand, this isn't the way we live or want to live, but this is how they were living. So I asked permission to enter, their territory, if you will. And they were very receptive of doing it that way and let my people go in, and we cleaned up around the perimeter because their area was actually pretty clean. And I said, they're going to be going further down this freeway, this elevated freeway, and we're cleaning up. And so I had all these people out there in their kids and their little garden gloves cleaning. I had designated one person to be in charge of sharps, needles, and any type of paraphernalia, someone who knew how to handle them safely. Don't want everybody picking these up and just putting them in the garbage. And then, so as they're working their way down the road, this commander, he comes up and he gets me and he says, please don't let your people go around the bend in the road. We call that zombie land, and we can't protect you there. Now, we have men who served in the military. Yeah, they put their lives on the line. They're living in a homeless camp under a freeway and taking care of each other. And I brought these people out there with Mr. Pressler to clean up, and his concern was, we can't protect you.
Wow.
That is something that just anchored my resolve in what was going on here in Sacramento and across the country. These people had nothing and still wanted to protect us.
And that's also one of the reasons you're running for Congress, is you want to be able to make a difference. You're already making a difference with the stuff that you do. We're running a little short on time right now. So I just love everything that you're doing. I had one quick question. was to do with the Carter-Baker Commission from 2005 that Jimmy Carter had been involved in to do with elections. Is there anything within that commission's report that you thought was a good idea?
You know, there were a lot of things that were in it that were a good idea, and there's lots of good ideas. I want to focus on what I thought might be short-sighted because I am passionate about states' rights and centralized power. Because, we saw what the Department of Education did to education in this country. So part of that was to centralize voter registration. And
Mhm.
I would improve on that part. I still believe voter registration should be done in the states, but there should be a central data bank where it can be cross-referenced, kind of like criminal database, NCIC, where you can check warrants and that sort of thing. But we still have to maintain states' rights. The more we, even with good intentions, move things to being centralized, particularly centralized in Washington, D.C., I'm going to scrutinize and I'm going to push back. I like good ideas, but I like improving on what I think is a good idea.
Right. And one of the other things they had in there was the real ID. Would you
Yes.
support the real ID? That was so nobody would be disenfranchised. So a lot of the stuff that's in there is what we are trying to take care of now. But this is 21 years ago. The Democrats actually looked into it. It was bipartisan. We
Mhm.
want to encourage people to read the full Carter-Baker Commission report. And you're going to be able to find it on our website, www.fightvoterfraud.org. And I got to tell you, Chris, we really appreciate your coming on our new series. Like I said, SYNC-O-WICZ presents Candidate Spotlight. So thank you again so much. And we want people to pay attention to you during this campaign season.
All right. Yep. Not only pay attention, but you can donate, you can help, you can jump on the internet with social media or even making phone calls. So I'm going to give a shameless pitch for bishforcongress.com. It's BISH for Congress.com. My name is Christine Bish and the T is silent.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your coming on. And
Thank
thank you
you.
everyone for watching.